Hey there, and welcome back to another Miraculous Ladybug Season 2 Retrospective review, where we go through old episodes of Miraculous we never got to make videos on and give our thoughts. Today we're going to be taking a look at Reverser, which is the first appearance of Marc, who ends up becoming one of the core Miraculous heroes, so it's a pretty important episode, even if it doesn't seem so at the time. Nothing else for it but to jump into things. We start off the episode at school, where Marc is sitting underneath the stairs, writing stories based on some drawings on his phone. Marinette ends up walking over to him and speaking to him about how her class is a free hour that many of them are spending in the art room. He should come along, seeing as his class is already finished for the day. In the art room, we see that a few members of the class are here showcasing their talents. Nathaniel's there working on drawings of Ladybug and Eiffel Illustrator, although now he's called Mighty Illustrator, as he's become a proper hero. At the same time, we see Rose writing lyrics for her band, Alex working on street art, although is it still street art if it's not in the street? And then Marinette's working on a brand new hat. The teacher tells Nathaniel that his drawings and concepts are really awesome, but that he should team up with a creative writer since he feels like he can't write it alone, which obviously sets the stage for Marc to team up with him, which eventually snowballs into their relationship that we see by seasons 5 and 6. Marc comes in and is all nervous, and the teacher completely sets him at ease, and I have to say, this dude just seems like the best. He's such a kind and wholesome character, and I kind of wish they'd do more with him and have him feature in some more episodes, you know? I do wonder how Marinette even knows Marc though, seeing as the others in this class, they don't seem to know him at all. As they're talking, Marc then notices some of Nathaniel's drawings and looks at them in awe, before Chloe barges in and starts mocking Nathaniel for always drawing Ladybug, even though she feels that Ladybug couldn't care less about him. So it seems that despite her making some big strides as a character, she still kinda sucks. Baby steps, I guess, but at the same time, I will note the way in which her snark is dealt with here clearly feels different. Historically, her laughing at somebody like this would have been enough to set them on the path to akumatization, and she would have come out as the victor in the exchange. Here though, she's rebuked by the teacher and told she can only come in if she actually has something she's working on, otherwise she has to leave, and this is followed up by Alex openly mocking her. She mimics her pose and then makes fun of the fact that she always brings art, which is simply a collage of her selfies, which in turn gets everybody laughing at Chloe and has her storm off all flustered. So to me, the episode itself is trying to show that her character's softened and that she's lost a lot of her bite, so to speak. She doesn't have that same fear factor. Does she still have an unpleasant personality in a lot of ways? Yes, of course she does. But at the same time, she's no longer taken all that seriously by the others. She's more of an annoyance than a bully, and thus it feels like they were committed to her character arc at this stage of the story. I really do wonder which episode's going to signal a reversal in this. It's probably not until season 3, honestly, but how far through season 3? I also like that after Chloe left, the teacher actually rebuked Alex for bullying her in turn, and also that he was the only one that wasn't laughing. This dude is really underrated. He tells Marc that Marinette's been telling him all about how Marc is always writing, which is perfect because Nathaniel needs a writer if he's going to be able to turn his drawings into a comic book. He abruptly runs off as he gets all nervous and self-conscious, but in the chaos he drops his book in which one of his stories, The Diary of Ladybug, is written, and Marinette picks it up. Seeing as it's a story about her, she decides she's going to read it. Now yes, this is snooping, but when somebody's writing fanfic about you personally, I honestly think it gives you the moral high ground to read it. She then goes to find him in the locker room and she tells him that she's read it and that she thinks it's really good and it should be turned into a comic. She says that Nathaniel would be a great artist for it and would love to read it, which prompts Marc to somewhat freak out as obviously it's a very big step. I honestly loved the humor in this scene as Marc's panic felt very relatable, specifically when he starts thinking about how Nathaniel might hate his writing and thus he'd have to change schools to ensure he'd never run into him ever again. I have certainly had moments like that over the years, so this just made me laugh. In order to see whether Nathaniel likes it, but at no risk to Marc, Marinette erases his name as the author and presents Nathaniel the book to read. Now obviously, given that only earlier that day she was trying to introduce him to Marc to get them to team up until Marc ran off, it does feel rather obvious as to who would have written it. However, this guy seemingly thinks that for some reason, Ladybug herself gave Marinette her diary to in turn give to Nathaniel. Is he seriously this delusional, or is he just an idiot? It's probably one of the biggest fails in the history of the show, right? He fully believes that this is Ladybug's way of confessing her crush on him. I kind of forgot that I used to somewhat dislike Nate, to tell you the truth. He gets so much better over the years, but some of these earlier episodes can be rough. Whilst they watch Nathaniel read the story at a distance, Adrian appears and good golly, you can really see from scenes like this why he became so popular. He's cheeky, suave, and charismatic. Where the hell does this version of Adrian disappear to over the seasons? It's like they decided that they wanted Adrian and Cat Noir to feel like completely different characters, where in the earlier days, they were very much two sides of the same coin. It's honestly a shame when you see things like this because it does make you wonder what could have been had they stuck to this sort of characterization up through those dark days. His character would feel so different. Don't get me wrong, I think season 6 has turned a corner for the character in a lot of ways, but early days Adrian hits different. Nate talks to Marinette after school and she tells him that she set up a meeting with the author, and of course, he still thinks it was legitimately written by Ladybug, and so he is super keen. Recipe for disaster, of course, but this time not really because of anything that Marinette's done wrong. How could she have known that he was going to think this? It just doesn't make any sense that he'd think this way to me. She sets up a meeting at the park near her house so she can watch from the balcony and film, and then it just all goes wrong. Nate turns up and asks for Ladybug, and of course, Marc is not Ladybug. Marc then asks whether Marinette told Nate what was going on, which prompts Nate to turn and somehow spy Marinette filming from her balcony, which I guess makes him think it was a prank. I get initially being angry when you thought they were making fun of you, but when Marc started talking about how he wanted to make a comic with him, that's where I draw the line. Instead of cooling off and taking a breath, Nate continues to rage and says he will never make a comic with him, and then rips up the book! Is this dude legit? To be honest, Marc, at this point, even afterwards, I wouldn't want to make a comic with this dude. You could do better. Hell, even if he just stormed off, I could have said okay. He just humiliated himself, he had to feel this. But to rip the book? Nah. Marinette rushes down there as Marc begins to cry and is akumatized into Reverser, a villain capable of changing the key trait of any person. I had forgotten this power until just now, and yeah, I'm pretty sure this episode was very funny, at least from my memory. Marinette confronts him and Reverser blames her for everything, and decides that from now on, everybody's gonna hate her, and tries to hit her with a paper plane, except it hits poor old Mr. Pigeon, who's then pecked a couple times by his flock before they fly off on him, as he begs them to come back. This dude's life makes me so sad. He gets akumatized numerous times, and now is being victimized by random villains too? Can he ever catch a break? Reverser pulls another paper plane to attack Marinette, but is distracted by Officer Roger, who's either a massive fool walking up to an obviously akumatized villain and trying to talk down to them and give them a fine, or he's extremely brave. That being said, instead of trying to get them to show vehicle registration for a flying paper plane, perhaps going straight to the taser would be a better idea here. Especially since we've seen that regular people have gotten the better of akumatized villains before. Remember when Felix managed to dodge villain attacks just as his normal persona? Or when the Resistance managed to pin down Monarch in a fight that one time? I'm thinking a taser might actually somewhat work. It's a moot point though, as Rog gets hit and turned into somebody who no longer respects the rule of law. Off he goes, liberally shooting his taser, so bad luck to anybody who crosses his path. Marinette runs off in the meantime to turn into Ladybug and confronts Reverser, but ends up being dragged around the city by his glider. This is where we catch up with Adrian, who's sitting in a massive traffic jam that's being caused by huge protests about Andre planning to dump rubbish in space. Does a mayor even have this sort of power? Sometimes I wonder whether the story should have made him the president or something similar, because this dude rules the city like he is an absolute king, I swear. Adrian's sitting in the back of the car and notices Ladybug struggling, and also Officer Roger having robbed the bank. I'm surprised he managed to get away with this and that no other cops are trying to take him in. They wouldn't even know that somebody's been akumatized at this stage, right? Adrian tells Gorilla he's going to go grab his fencing gloves and be back before the traffic clears, and if you look at the building facades and then also remember that it was established that there were citywide traffic jams, it makes it very clear there's no chance he ran away far enough to not be seen when he transforms into Cat Noir. So that means there is zero chance those randoms in these cars don't know who Cat Noir is, as after all, Adrian is pretty famous. Too bad he doesn't know how to Miraculous Cat Noir at this point to remove their memories. We cut back over to Ladybug, who's still struggling but is by no means down and out, and this causes Reverser to actually use some effective tactics, which I will admit is rare for these early days villains. In order to hit Ladybug, he first targets a civilian and causes him to fall off the bridge, and as Ladybug swoops in to save him, this leaves her vulnerable. Suddenly she's clumsy and barely capable of throwing the yo-yo, let alone battling a supervillain. Thus, she's doomed, and Reverser is going to get his hands on the earrings, which is when Cat Noir joins the chat. Too bad that he announces his attack as he does so though, because a proper surprise attack might have knocked this guy off the glider and left him very vulnerable. Cat Noir goes to attack, but is in turn distracted by Ladybug being clumsy, which is not like her, and this in turn allows him to get hit and turn into a coward. Frightened, he jumped into Ladybug's arms, and since she's clumsy, they both tumble over the railing and into the water. A lucky escape for our dynamic duo. Gabe has got to be the unluckiest dude in the world, right? He creates a strong villain who defeats the heroes, or at the very least makes them so weak that they no longer pose a threat, and through force of luck, they escape, and then the villain decides to pursue side quests instead of upholding his side of the deal. He goes off to the art class trying to find Marinette and Nathaniel, and we get a brief interlude of Cat Noir and Ladybug suffering under their reversals. Ladybug can barely walk at all and is constantly falling over, but cognitively, she's all still there, and she knows what they have to do. Meanwhile, Cat Noir's physically fine and dandy, but is crippled by fear and anxiety, and doesn't want to fight the villain again. He thinks he's too strong and way too mean. This is the type of episode you can stand back and look at and say, Season 2 was peak, wasn't it? It's such a creative concept and the jokes are all landing. In his quest to find Nathaniel and Marinette, Marc stumbles across Chloe and Sabrina and reverses their roles, and even though I like Season 2 Chloe, I'm not gonna lie, this is cathartic. It's always fun to see her get a taste of her own medicine, like we saw earlier when Alex slapped her down in the art room. It's especially funny here because of the request as well. Sabrina wants a fresh juice made of strawberries, but with all the seeds picked out. How long do you reckon it would take to make a full glass of strawberry juice with no seeds at all? Think of all the berries you'd have to de-seed, my god. Sabrina's got to have been subconsciously brewing that one up for years, right? We shift over to the big protest against the space trash program, and it's of course crashed by the Reverser, who makes Andre's priorities shift. Instead of wanting to keep all the rubbish in space, thereby making Paris the cleanest city in the world, he decides to bring it all back, turning it into the filthiest trash heap the world has ever known. The worst part is, apparently giving that order is as easy as playing a game on your iPad. Why are such crucial, dangerous controls so easily accessible? Why the hell would the mayor have this sort of power to begin with? The Paris they live in is a hellscape sometimes, I swear. At the school, we see that our heroes have resorted to traveling via taxi as Ladybug's too clumsy, and I presume Cat Noir's too afraid to zoom around and leap above buildings. Clumsy Ladybug's fun here, I will say that, but it is truly nothing compared to the glory that is coward Cat Noir, who yells at the driver calling him a maniac and who's wrapped himself up in a blankie. It's such a hilarious visual. They head upstairs to find Rose, Julika, and the teacher trashing the room because now they hate art and music and want to destroy it all. However, this in turn gives Ladybug an idea. She notices that in all of Nathaniel's drawings, the Louvre features heavily, and thus she realizes this is where he might be. Either that or he'd just be, I don't know, at his house? But they try the Louvre first. I also love the idea that these two are just slowly making their way across Paris whilst Reverser is going out of control attacking anybody. It's such a goofy premise and is well and truly helping this episode stand out from the crowd. I also like that the villain is quite powerful. In this Monster of the Week era, sometimes the villains would be rather weak, one-note characters, but this is one of the better ones, up there with the likes of Style Queen in my eyes. In the Louvre, we see Nathaniel and Alex hanging out, and my god, Alex, rollerblading inside a museum? Really? Isn't that just absurdly reckless and irresponsible? I mean, they're in the room with some pretty priceless artifacts here. You can see the Mona Lisa. How are you going to get away with doing this, especially since the museum straight up seems to be open to the public as Ladybug and Cat Noir walk in later? Surely there'd be security there to take her back to her dad, right? He would have to be mad about this too. Oh well. Alex here acts as the voice of reason to Nathaniel, explaining that Marinette isn't a bully like that, and it seems that he jumped the gun when he freaked out on Marc and ripped up the book. Yeah, no shit, Einstein. I tell you what, but this episode has really damaged my esteem of his character. I'd truly forgotten this happened, and now I think that he's lucky the ruler came out to somewhat offset this in my eyes. Ladybug and Cat Noir arrive at the Louvre to talk to Nate and show him and Alex a broadcast thing to talk about how the trash is going to rain down on Paris unless the mayor stops it, although, is that even possible? It looked like they were just giant dumpsters or shipping containers, so wouldn't they, and indeed the garbage within, simply burn up upon atmospheric re-entry? Regardless, Reverser refuses to stop it unless Nathaniel, Marinette, Ladybug, and Cat Noir all surrender themselves to him, so Ladybug proposes that they go and speak to him, as historically, the power of friendship has always worked, so why not try again? What was interesting to me here is that Alex demands that she be allowed to come too, as, after all, they're going to need her help, which she proves by scaring Cat Noir into Ladybug's arms, which causes her to fall over. She also claims that Nate's her friend, and she's not going to be leaving him alone, which is very wholesome, although I will admit, I didn't realize they were such close friends. Is this something that you only see in this specific episode, or is it something that you see linger across the seasons? I honestly don't remember it, but it's actually a really fun pairing, so I'd be sad to see it go. They make their way to the Eiffel Tower, which is every villain's go-to lair, and once again I have to say that this version of Cat Noir, it's one of my favorites. He's once again telling the taxi driver that he's a disgrace and a public health hazard, to which the driver replies, he never even went over 15 miles an hour. I love that they have absolutely zero haste in this episode. Reverser has caused untold chaos, and they're moments away from molten dumpsters raining down on Paris, and they just dawdle their way there. It makes me laugh so much. I feel like the humor of these early seasons is something that also kind of went away over time. Some of these early concepts and storylines are just absolutely bonkers in the best way possible. Ladybug uses her lucky charm and summons up a bamboo roll, and quickly thinks of a plan. She gets Reverser's attention by shouting into a construction cone, which for some reason functions exactly like a loudspeaker. How? Who knows? Magic, I guess. She says that she'll hand over Cat Noir, and in exchange, Reverser will stop the dumpsters, but he bargains Nathaniel into the deal as well. I have to say big ups to Cat Noir for this one, because even though he's been reversed into a coward, he still goes through with this swap. Just when you think the episode can't get any better, it does, as when Cat Noir steps out of the elevator for the swap, it's revealed that in the time since he and Nathaniel got in, Nate blindfolded him and used the bamboo mat and blankie to make a kite, to which Cat Noir was strapped onto. Nathaniel tells him to run, and he does, and he falls off the tower, but it turns out Ladybug's yo-yo was attached to him, and so Alex catches it and is able to use him as a battle kite to fight against Reverser in a really fun and very silly battle. I really enjoyed this section as it gives everybody something to do. Ladybug made the plan, Nathaniel and Alex enact it, and then Cat Noir is both the weapon, but he also saves Marc once he gets his courage back. It kind of feels like how things often happen in season 6 now, where the fights aren't just the Ladybug show and a lot of other characters get their own big moments. Ladybug and Alex reverse the damage together, and then Ladybug cleanses the Akuma before Nate and Marc settle the misunderstanding, and we cut a little way into the future where they release their first superhero comic dedicated to Marinette for bringing them together. Here's where the episode ends, and it was just amazing and showcased that not everything needs to be some huge story-heavy episode pushing forward the overarching narrative to be good. You just need strong characters, an interesting plot, a compelling villain, and top-level action. This episode has it all, and it might be my favorite episode I've watched of this season so far, although that's also recency bias talking too. So with all that being said, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of this episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.